Welcome to Toy Business Unboxed, your gateway to the secrets of the toy industry. Here, Jason Shea, a toy entrepreneur and expert in the field.
Every product we develop is really inspired by some of the real life experience that we have with our son.
60% of all toys last year were sold on Amazon, which is incredible.
Be passionate about it because it's a road, it's a journey.
Like when you have an idea that you think is like gonna somewhat like change the world, make things better, I'd say go for it.
We'll guide you through the enchanting world of toy design, marketing, and manufacturing. Now let the unboxing begin.
Welcome back to another episode of Toy Business Unboxed. Today we're talking with George, the mind behind Game of Ham, a hilarious and unpredictable party game for adults that combined with smart mechanic with total chaos. And thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, George.
Thank you for having me.
Can you kind of talk about, I was wondering if you can share with your background on how do you even get started into this industry? I know you have some background in like film industry as well.
Sure. Figuring out what the next steps were and what I wanted to do with my career. I got a very terrible knockoff of Cards Against Humanity. And when I got that, I realized, well, this is awful. Basically, it was terrible knockoffs of like a guy with a jigsaw in his head or whatever, just very obvious horror stuff. And I said, we could do better than this. So, because my sister got me this gift. And then from there, I continued to do that for several months. I eventually went to grad school, did both the game and grad school for a period of time. Realized that grad school was actually affecting my ability to do the game. And at that point, I had put in about 7 months with the game and I realized this is actually something marketable. So I decided to drop out of grad school and continue doing this, which was a great choice because in the end, well, it ended up working out. And I did a bunch of different things. So in the series of steps, I realized Cards Against Humanity, a lot of people didn't understand what the references were. Mm-hmm. And Apples to Apples apparently does do something like this where you have a little description at the bottom of the cards. I took it a step further. There's a lot of references and a lot of, I call it the flavor to the pork, the game of ham. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues with games in this genre as a whole is the grammar between the questions and answer cards don't actually work together. So you'll have something where it's like Me Go Park Now, which sort of ruins it. And a lot of people might correct that. But a lot of people also decide this just doesn't work for the card and I'm going to choose something else. So I developed a verbal algorithm over the course of 2 years where I could make both nouns and actions work interchangeably with the prompts, which is one of the things that gives the game an edge. And a lot of people didn't like things like write-in cards. So I came up with a new type of card where there's a prompt, but you get to insert one word, like what is blank best known for? And you get blank with suggestions so you don't have to be creative. And one of the suggestions, of course, is someone in the room. So you could actually bring the audience into the game to some level. And eventually the game turned into one of these things, well, how can we make this more of a complete game? Because party games as a whole, it feels like it's something you do with your friends. You sort of slap your knee, you laugh a few times, and then you sort of move on, and the replay value isn't there for a lot of party games. So eventually this became a board game too, with the concept behind it being the cards affect the board and the board affects the cards. And it scales at 8 players. So you could actually go up to 16 players with this game too.
Oh, okay.
The idea is you kind of build your own how you want, like Legos or Minecraft.
Yes.
So the game itself actually has a 24-page rule book with 5 different game modes, over 50 optional mix and match rules, and just a bunch of different ways to play the game. And in play testing, we realized that was actually scary, which is why we also came up with the quick start guide. And of course, we had a little tongue-in-cheek humor there too. And the vision for the game is to not just be a party game. That's one of the unique things that sets this game apart, but actually a game that goes into different game genres. And eventually every game connects with each other like a giant puzzle piece. And we just came out with the first release in that vision, which would be called the Punishing Board, which is a 1 to 6 player game that works with dice rather than the party game components. It is actually child friendly.
Okay.
And it does connect into the game, bringing a dice mechanic into the fold. And I like to recommend this one for couples with unresolved issues. You gotta have some fun. And of course, one of the unique things to the game too, the game has a higher price point than other games in the genre. It's $50 versus other games, which are like 25 to 30 range, 35. But it has significantly more cards. It's 810 cards because we designed the game so you don't actually need cards in this game. Other games, you have to kind of buy the expansions to keep playing. Yep. But with this game, we made it so you don't need to do that. And instead, you get a season that ports to your liking with goodies like depression, X ways to say I love you, anxiety. We got the works. So you basically get to go on different adventures, each one with its own unique flair and unique flavor, which is one of the unique selling points. And primarily the way we move this game is through conventions. So Of course, we offer sort of deals that you could go and get at the convention. We call them combo platters because we love leaning into the food puns here.
I see, I see, I see. Just so I understand, like the basic game rule, how long does it usually take to finish like the basic game without the expansion? And like you mentioned about the players, but can you also explain like the just on the high level how
Sure.
does the
So
rule?
this plays just like Cards Against Humanity. Judge reads a question, people play responses. Judge picks a winner, and at the bottom of each one of the cards, there's little numbers, and those numbers allow you to move across a board. You start at a beginning spot, you finish at the last spot. And as you move across the board, you pick up different ability cards that allow you to do things like swap the cards in your hand, play twice in a round, force the judge to pick a different card, or just be a jerk and make your friend sit out.
Okay.
Behind this game is the cards affect the board, and the board affects the cards, creating a unique push-pull mechanic. And with the punishing board, which doesn't work with cards at all, that's much more take that, leaning into games like Sorry and Shoots and Ladders, and games, and even a little bit of Magic the Gathering elements in there because we actually have a stack rule for the people who play games like Magic the Gathering. And so it focuses much more on the punishment aspect, which is one of the things people really enjoy in this type of humor. And basically, there's tons of ways to play, and the general way, it could be as short as 20 minutes, but it could be as long as about 60 minutes. It depends on how quickly people play the game, but I would say a real sober guess for people in a group of 4 to 8, I would say you're looking at about a maybe 30, 40-minute game.
I see. Okay. Thank you for the explanation. And you mentioned about like going to trade show for the business. Any other marketing strategy you have tried that has worked well for the brand so far?
Sure. So, I mean, we did do a few different strategies. We worked with a bunch of different content creators. The game is very searchable. We did reviewers, we did instructional videos, we did gameplay videos. We worked with many of those content creators, and that had moderate success. It didn't really justify the expenses involved. So I wouldn't call that a huge success in terms of marketing. We did Facebook and Google ads as another means of bolstering the game. And although that showed some success too, I wouldn't say that would be a huge success. The thing that's been a major success has been trade shows. So I know a lot of people may say that social media is one of the great things for games, which could work for certain games because what you see is what you get is one of the things that you see at trade shows a lot. Like if you go to a trade show, you see artwork, you know exactly what it is. Board games as a whole are going to face an additional challenge because the person has to explain what it is. In fact, there's only one other game that we really see at trade shows. Shout out to one of our good friends, Drinks with Frenemies, which is a game that the title sort of suggests what it is, which makes it a little bit easier to understand when you go to trade shows. And we love Eric. He's fantastic. And the game is great. Definitely recommend Drinks with Frenemies for people. When it comes to just games as a whole, and this is where we've talked to many game developers too, they find it challenging to do trade shows because the high expenses involved and the ROI just isn't there unless you find a way to sort of bridge the gap between filling people in on what your product is quickly. And let's face it, most people aren't going to care what your product is. And that's your job, whether or not it's through the digital space or the real space. And with our brand, we've really mastered the personal in-person space, which is why it's been a success. But you don't see that as frequently. So I would definitely say for a lot of people, the digital space might be better. But for us, it's been the personal space because we get to put the cards in people's hands and the product speaks for itself.
I see. And maybe there's some additional strategy you can consider to translate some of those success into like some of the digital marketing effort potentially as well.
Yeah, that's something we always play around with here and there. Every time, and that's the thing of when you create a brand as a whole, especially with a brand where it's not obvious just by looking at it what it is. Like you hear a title like Game of Ham, you don't know it's an adult party game just by the name.
Yeah.
You have the additional challenge of jamming a lot of information to your potential consumer in a short period of time, and it's got to be like an elevator pitch. If you can't master being able to translate that information, you've lost them because frankly, why would they care to begin with? A lot of creators are going to have to face at varying degrees.
Yeah, that's true both in the in-person setting and also in the online setting. You definitely want to make sure the information or the video you're showing can really summarize all the benefit and the feature really quickly before they lose their attention altogether. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the drop-off for a lot of videos, if you get beyond 10 seconds, you're already doing better than a lot of videos in terms of marketing.
Yeah. Okay. And I think you have developed so many different like expansion. Can you also talk about like total amount of product you currently have as a brand right now?
Sure. So we have the main game, we have the punishing board, we have a bigger storage box, which is like a Where's Waldo artwork and everything. And I believe at this point, there was 23 unique products. So we're looking at 19 expansions, 17 of which are things you could get online, 2 of which you could only do in person that aren't mentioned online. You got to have some fun with it. But also a brand like this, people like the darker material. So we have 2 convention exclusives that go darker than our other stuff.
Oh,
Serial
okay.
killer dark web and
Mhm.
stuff that's just going to get us canceled, What's the line of what's acceptable, right?
I see.
And we do it in
Okay.
person because we actually have people even sign a waiver in order to purchase it.
Oh,
So,
whoa. Okay.
no, it's all fun, tongue in cheek, and people have a good time.
I see.
And each one takes on its own personality. So the interesting thing about this brand is it's more about the writing than it is even about the mechanics, which is
Oh,
unique to this genre of game. Don't get me wrong, there's a 24-page rule book, there's a bunch of different ways to play, but ultimately the bread and butter of this genre of game is going to be the writing ability, which is a little bit more unique compared to perhaps your more traditional Euro type game. But when it comes to the personalities involved, the idea is, I don't know if people know that old anime card captors from like the 90s or whatever, where there's the main heroine who there's magical items who sort of appear all over the place. And there's lots of TV shows that do this kind of thing. And
Yeah.
the heroine's job is to capture these magical items into cards, right?
Mm.
That's what I like to describe it as when it comes to creating each one of these expansions. To some level, you sort of have to be an artist. I don't like to refer to myself as an artist, but you kind of have to acknowledge the artist's quality. There's different aspects to what existence is, I guess you could say. And each one is something that if you're able to get a tuning fork to what it is, you could shine a light on it and create something that people resonate with. That's what it really comes down to, being able to resonate with the product. And the game is filled with all kinds of little Easter eggs. I mean, the title itself is Game of Ham, which stands for Hating All Mankind, which is a reference to the original genres of games that started this, Cards Against Humanity, that type of game, but also a reference to a bunch of other things too. And there's tons of Easter eggs throughout the whole thing. But in creating each one of these expansions, I like to say method acting is sort of one of the things that contributes to the style in which the game gets developed. So as the writer, I have to put myself in a certain mindset in order to create a certain tone of cards, right? Like some expansions are much more tongue in cheek, like
Yeah.
these 2 guys, yep, that'll kill you, and X ways to say I love you. These guys are more tongue in cheek. It's a little bit of sweet, a little bit of sour, but it's sort of middle of the road. But then there's also, and as the name suggests, things like, yep, that'll kill you, or things that'll kill you literally or emotionally. And the fun part is the emotional,
Yeah.
We take our creative liberties. Things like X ways to say I love you. This could be stuff that's sweet like a breakfast in bed, but it could also be sour like a black eye, because how to say I love you has a bunch of different things. But then there's also the more emotionally evocative ones, like depression and anxiety. The stories behind this, and this is sort of interesting. So one of the experimental sets when creating the expansions, because as an artist, your goal is to sort of imagine different areas people might be interested in, take a shot, do some play testing, see if it actually has some viability, right?
Yeah.
Of Hot Emotions was one of the more experimental ones where some people really resonated with it and
Yeah.
other people didn't. The goal of that one was to capture strong emotions in each one of the cards. Stuff
Okay.
like rivers made from the tears of unheard pain, slightly poetic, a little bit of angsty teenager maybe, but it captures the spectrum of emotions.
Yeah.
And when going to conventions, one of the jobs of a marketer is to be able to read the customer and be able to adapt your marketing strategy to what the customer's needs are. And one of the things that was fascinating, because frankly, I sort of look at myself as sort of like a psychologist when I go to these shows, because I don't go to small shows. The smallest show I'll go to is like 10,000 people, but I'm at all the big ones, New York Comic Con, you name it. I'm all over the country. So you get to see a bunch of different people, but the one thing people really resonated with was in that particular expansion was depression, right? Which
Okay.
it's one of those things people don't really talk about, but that's an example of shining a light on a part of society that people might otherwise not want to discuss. And then,
Yeah.
sure enough, people kept talking about it, and then people were like, "Oh, I have that and anxiety." So sure enough, I was like, "Well, screw it, let's have some fun. We'll make an anxiety pack too." And what pairs better with depression than anxiety? And then we
True.
listen to the fans who tell us what they want. So we ended up coming up with some other expansions, like one of the new bestsellers is Good Parenting, and I like to tell them
Oh.
that's one they could unpack in therapy. It's sweet stuff, but also the sour stuff, a little bit of everything. The
I see.
superhero pack, which is not just literal superpowers, but things that should be a superpower, like reading above an 8th grade level. Fun
Yeah.
fact, it's actually the US average. That is not even made up, unfortunately. And basically each one of these different expansions takes on a tone. And the idea is to flavor the pork to your liking. That way the game has sort of a nice mix of different cards, but depending on the expansions you do, and we do it in volumes. I don't know if you saw that, but this is volume 3. There's
Yeah.
so there's a volume 2 and volume 1. You do it in increments, so you can basically make the game you want, which is exactly why the sandbox exists as well. Well, this is something that was sort of inspired by how booster packs work in a lot of trading card games, where you come up with a certain number of cards, but here it's not random. Obviously, you have predetermined things, but it's the same concept in terms of you buy more to build a deck you want. So that was sort of the loose inspiration there.
Got it. I want to kind of take one step back and ask one question. I think a lot of the entrepreneur and also designer within the board game industry face is in the initial process. What make you decide to go with self-publishing instead of try to pitch your idea to a bigger publisher and just go for licensing instead?
Well, so there's a program near me called SCORE, where basically retired people give entrepreneurs insights in various fields. And I remember when talking to my mentor in that, she was talking about how in licensing, if you sell a game for $40, for example, you might only make 40 cents. And not just
Yeah,
that,
that's true.
be able to have
Yeah.
like a certain amount of, I guess you could say, standing. And
Yeah.
I was just like, well, screw this. I don't really want to have to rely on anyone else. I'd rather just shoot my shot and take it. I mean, high risk. And don't get me wrong, to say that you don't go through periods. In fact, this guy here, a lot of the cards in there were inspired by the process of making a game like this. You go through periods where you're like, in fact, I think every entrepreneur has to sort of gaze at the abyss and sort of reflect on, did I make the right call in doing this at one point? And that's the difference between the successful entrepreneur and the failure of an entrepreneur. The ones that quit are the ones that never get there. Basically, I don't think I took the wrong step. I actually have no regrets in that regard, but I decided to just skip that because I was like, why would I want to put myself through this? I think I might have talked to a few different distributors early on in the process. And they were like, we don't even want to talk to you until you have 6 game products. It's like, why am I going to bother with this? I tried that. So that was one strategy. I ended up getting one distribution company to pick up the game just in time for COVID. So party games, of course, didn't do so well during COVID.
Yeah.
And that obviously didn't work out so well, but those were weird circumstances. And basically, after COVID finished and conventions opened up again, because the story for this is basically the game released at the end of 2019. And a few conventions happened where, and once again, we tried a few strategies. We actually created a list of over 2,000 mom and pop shops around the country.
Yeah.
It ends up being a lot of phone tag. You can't end up reaching the person who you want to reach, who could actually make the decisions.
Yeah.
Following up a million times, and it ends up being for like one wholesale. It's like, this was not worth the time. And don't get me wrong, it's great. You have some relationships where it's like, there might be some repeat purchases here and there, but ultimately, it's just not as exciting as conventions, which was another strategy we used. We did Anime New York City in 2019, where we realized that this is a good direction to go in. Planned a year-long campaign for March of 2020. And for the history buffs out there, you can guess what happened during March of 2020. In fact, 1 week before the first convention is when COVID was the pandemic, the national pandemic. Everything got paused. Then conventions started opening up in August 2021. So from there, started doing some shows. It ended up working out. And at that point, I had a full-time job in a marketing position for a real estate company. I had a super cool boss who was okay with me doing shows because he knew about the situation and super flexible. Definitely good to have a good boss, right? And eventually in May of 22, I realized this is something that is viable and did a gamble of doing that campaign that was initially planned in 2020. It worked out and have been doing it full time ever since.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story of that. And what has been some of the hardest part in your entrepreneurial journey? Like, what are some of the biggest challenge you face?
Sure. I mean, there's so many challenges at every step of the way. And as you know, there's always a curveball. And you got to be able to deal with it. That the curveball could be something random from the manufacturing side. It could be a curveball from something from a political side with these tariffs and everything. It could be a curveball from your personal life, whether or not you're going through some personal issues, right? But every step of the way, you find a way to sort of navigate through it. Some of the biggest challenges were when working with manufacturers in the manufacturing process, being able, because eventually you sell enough product, you got to do reorders. Getting these companies to do the color matching from the previous cards was a challenge. So Pantone is definitely something I recommend people to get into who are new to this. At this point, I was kind of committed, so you kind of stick with the CMYK for people who don't know that. That's cyan, magenta, yellow, black. Basically, the different color palettes. Do Pantone is something I recommend to entrepreneurs. Also, if you're new, be able to time your inventory correctly. If you don't time it correctly, it is punishing. It is very punishing. The worst reorder situation I ever had was there were some delays with the manufacturing process because at that point we were a little more seasoned. We understood how long the process takes. It takes about 6 months if you're lucky, and it could take a little bit longer than that from start of creating a new product. The reorder is very much quicker, but you got to do a lot of back and forth with files. And all kinds of random curveballs happen. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but being able to just get the card size, standard playing card size, being off by those slight millimeters, you could feel it in your hand. And that's not something you would think about. But that's one of those curveballs you got to be able to deal with in real time. Sometimes the process for the manufacturing, you get the prototype, as you know, and then eventually you do the mass production. But for those who don't, and we had a couple instances because now that we have so many different products, obviously we've gone through the prototype and then production phase a few different times. Sometimes the prototype wouldn't reflect what the production copy was. Like, and it's like being able to say, guys, this is not what you gave me as a prototype.
And
then it's like
quality control.
And then you got to do back and forth. So that's another curveball. When it comes to being able to put yourself out there, you got to take risks. Okay. If you don't take risks, you don't take rewards, but there's certain risks that you want to take and certain risks you don't want to take. So given that the business sort of evolved to work in a convention space, which might be, which is probably more unique for some of the people here, because I think a lot more people went the more traditional route of doing it online or working through distributors or whatever it is. Working in the convention space, it's a different animal, and you want to be able to experiment. So satire is a big thing for the brand here. We love satire. So working in the conventions, we started satiring different products. Okay. So experimenting with things that might or might not work that are still connected to the brand. We came up with plush toys. We came up with pins. We came up with parody stickers of different anime characters or whatever. Came up with even ham artwork, which the idea was to have a whole bunch of different artists create some unique thing in their style related to a ham, with that being the assignment. And each one, the idea was make it so the markup was good enough that even if the thing failed, you still break even. At the end of the day, you never know what's going to succeed and what isn't. And you want to minimize your loss. So that's something I would recommend too. Experiment, be bold, but also do it smartly where the margins are good enough that even if the thing is a failure, you still break even. Obviously, there's other things too that might be a little more proven. Like when you buy plush toys or something that are more conventional, you can feel a little bit more at ease than if you do a ham plushie, for example. Like, do you know if there's a market for a ham plushie?
For sure.
So obviously know your market, but when you're actually experimenting with a new product that's not proven, try to get as high return on investment as possible so it breaks even. And sure enough, that principle worked. Ended up having some failure products, which is fine because in the end, one, you learn. Don't be afraid of failing because you're going to learn. And also being able to find that product that does resonate with the audience. The return on investment makes up for all the failures to begin with. And frankly, I think that's how a lot of business works, not just in this industry. And getting creative with different ways you could build your brand. Don't think small scale. A game is one thing, but be able to think of other ways your game could actually connect with your audience. Like one thing I think is a great brand example is T-Turtle. So they found a way to bridge T-shirts with board games.
Interesting.
And they found a way to get unique. And I'm talking to an artist friend because you develop all these relationships at conventions now, who primarily sells video game and pop culture artwork, who wants to get into card games and being able to mesh his style of artwork with the board game industry. So these are people who have sort of gone the other way with it, where they didn't start with a board game, but they go into the board game space. But with me, with our brand, we went from the board game space and started experimenting with other spaces too.
Other spaces. Okay.
So that's definitely something I would recommend, but that's one of those things you do at the later stages of development. Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to make money.
For sure. So what is next for Game of Ham? What do you have on the horizon that you're currently working on?
Sure. So right now, there's a few different things that are being experimented with. There's a few expansions that are going to be worked on that are hopefully going to be released in the next year. Some of the ones that are at the final stages of drafting and ready to go to publishing would be some additional expansions for our Pocket Ham. We have this standalone expansion that is just the cards. So for people who know Cards Against Humanity, Apples to Apples, it would just be a pocket version of that for 3 to 4 players. So there's 2 additional volumes of that, which are medium. The first volume was a success. And now there's also going to be a military pack. Because one thing I recommend for people is know your audience and play to them, right? Depression and anxiety connected with people. So leaned into that in a humorous way. But also the three audiences for this brand are military, first responders, and ER nurses. So
Interesting. Okay.
knowing your audience allows you to be able to play into it. So there's also going to be a first responder pack, and the military pack plays on a different tone. So that's going to be developed. There's also, since we go to conventions, we're going to be working on an anime pack that's in the drafting stages, a divorce pack as well. But there's also a few other experimental games that are like the punishing board that stand on their own.
Yeah.
Those things are still in the earlier stages, but stay tuned for that because that's also going to be coming out.
I see. Thank you for sharing that. So where can people find more about you online?
Sure. So we're on all social media. The two most active ones would be Facebook and Instagram at Game-A-Ham. And of course, we have our website, gameaham.com.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your entrepreneurial journey within the toy and game industry. And also, do you have any last thing you want to share with the audience before we wrap up the interview?
Sure. So for anyone who wants to pursue this field, one thing I'd recommend, first off, to be an entrepreneur means to take risk. And like we said, you have to gaze at the abyss and be able to still be able to pull through and make the success happen. And if you're one of those people who likes to start things, but you have difficulty when the challenges get hard, this is not the lifestyle for you.
Yeah.
But if you think you're crazy enough to do it, and you got to be a little crazy. In fact, the world is built by the crazy dreamers, right?
Yes. Yeah.
As challenging as it was to develop the game, and keep in mind, it took 2 years of development. That's like 65-hour work weeks consistently with little money being made during that period of time to be able to pull it off. And that's hard. But compared to the development, the marketing is so much harder. And if you want to go into something like this, you have to be prepared for that.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that piece of advice. I think that's very important. Just like you said, marketing can be even harder than the design itself. Yeah.
And listen to the times. Pay attention to what is working and go in that direction. You have to develop the guerrilla marketer strategy, which is basically pay attention to what you're seeing and adapt to the environment as you see it. Like I said, expansions got developed here because we noticed certain trends in who was paying attention to this kind of game. So we worked around that. And what resonated with people and exploring that direction, you just take your shots and then do testing and do lots of testing because your product is only as good as your weakest product.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you again for being on our show today and sharing your story. And for our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Toy Business Unboxed podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and find it insightful and inspiring. If you like what you have heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. We really appreciate your support and would love it if you can leave us a review and share the podcast with your friend and colleague. For more resource tips and the latest update within the toys and game industry, visit our website at toy-launch.com. Join the conversation and connect with us on social media using hashtag ToyBusinessUnbox. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future episodes. Until next time, keep innovating, keep creating, keep bringing joy to toys. This is Jason Shea signing off on the Toy Business Unboxed podcast. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much, everyone.